Hey, it's great to have you back for another episode on the Falling Forward podcast. I'm your host, Dakota Adair, and I want to thank you for joining the conversation. If you are a first-time listener, we release a podcast every other Tuesday. We have insightful and encouraging conversations with people from all walks of life, so whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, I want to welcome you. If you are a regular listener, it's an honor that you have joined us again. It's been great to hear from each and every one of you, and if you want to send any thoughts, questions, or ideas, please feel free to reach out to us. I also want to say thank you so much to those who have reviewed or rated this podcast, and I especially want to thank those who have helped spread the word on social media. It means the world to me whenever you invite others to listen to the show. Lastly, if you love this podcast and want to partner with us, you can become a patron. What is that? Well, click the link below to learn more about becoming a patron. Thank you again so much for your love and support. Today's guest is a good friend of mine, Robert Huffer. He has played an influential role in the startup and process of this podcast, and I could not thank him enough for his encouragement and support. Robert is the type of guy that he just speaks his mind. He's always cracking jokes, and he's a jack of all trades. He really is a fascinating person to get to know. He is a salesman and business manager for a large company in Dallas, Texas. He trains people to run successful franchises as well as helps develop multimedia training content. There's a lot of stuff, but the irony is this. Robert has and does struggle with social anxiety disorder, which is remarkable in regards to what he does for a living. I met Robert at a youth camp about a year ago, and we were both serving as leaders. I remember him opening up about his relationship with Jesus and how he had just been radically transformed, and he talked about where he was and where he is, and it was just very encouraging to hear his story, and he's going to share that today. See, today's topic discussion is different, but I believe it's pivotal in today's climate. We are going to discuss the reality that people struggle with social anxiety disorder and suicidal thoughts. See, there are many people that are stuck in a place of hopelessness or inescapability. And if your mind has ever drifted to a place of self-harm, please seek help. Talk to a family member, a church member, or a pastor. Or in fact, do this right here. Call this number, 1-800-273-8255. Listen, God loves you, and you are wanted and adored by Him. It's remarkable to think about this. The Creator of the universe finds you precious, finds you to have significant value. You were created with a purpose, and one of those is a relationship with Jesus Christ. See, great despair, pain, and loneliness doesn't need to end in death. There's hope, eternal hope in Jesus. You are never alone if you know that. Romans 8:39 says this, "And I am convinced that there is nothing that can separate us from God's love, neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither our fears for today nor our worries about tomorrow. Not even the powers of hell can separate us from God's love." That's wonderful. Listen, turn to Jesus today and you will never be alone. I'm going to thank Robert for coming on the podcast and sharing what God has done in his life. The remarkable thing is that we can find hope in his story, which is God's story, and I pray that it can impact someone else. This is Dakota Dare, and you are listening to the Falling Forward podcast. Anyways, always gotta start off the show with a sip of coffee. So Robert,
we're recording now.
We have started recording. So you're the only person that's been aware of that. I don't know how many episodes I've done, and I will mid conversation start the podcast, and people just don't they just go along, they don't even acknowledge the fact that I just pressed record in their mid sentence, And so you're the first.
So that's why I sound arrogant. I can't shoot anything.
Oh no,
I'm not perfect.
I know. People have to know you have a good sense of humor. But for those listening, this is Robert Huffer. He's I would call you in a way my podcasting mentor.
Podcasting mentor, okay.
Because so I've been talking about doing a podcast, and this is kind of really cool. I remember I was thinking about doing the podcast, learning the technology and everything. And then right at the moment where I was like, I'm not going to do this. This is just too much work, and this is a waste of time. And all the doubt that I had, you messaged me on Facebook.
You posted something. You had a question. I don't know. You mentioned podcasting or something like that. I was like, hey, if he's looking into podcasting, I did that. I enjoyed it. I did it for, I don't know, about off and on for 3 or 4 years with some buddies.
What was the name of it for those who don't?
Well, I had two. The first
know.
one we did was the Just Us League podcast. It was just a group of friends where it was just us being us. And I remember back, the Justice League is a video game. We were just being dorks, right? So you have a podcast, you got to be a dork. And we were talking about movies, video games, books that we read and stuff. So it was just us being ourselves. But geography stopped it because at the time we lived close to each other, so we just would record it in my office / man cave. And then I just got out of practice of it. I was traveling a lot for work. The other person that was co-host with me, he moved, so we just kind of stopped doing it. And then I kicked it back off. I was like, I really wanted to do that. I had a couple other things I wanted to do. What I didn't like about our podcast was it was too everything. It was like the Walmart of podcasts. Like, we talked about everything, books, TV shows. It was just we were talking about too much. We weren't focused on anything. So we started a new one called That's How We Geek. Mm-hmm. Again, I travel so much, I eventually stopped again. We did it for about a year and a half. But we would just get people on. Instead of talking about what we geeked out about, we would talk about what other people geeked out about. So we got our pastor at our church on there, and he's an Iron Man. So we interviewed him about Ironman, because obviously me and my co-host, we are not athletic individuals, so we don't know anything about it. But just letting people get on there and talk about what they geek out about and kind of get their perspective on things. So we did that for a little while.
I bet you you're talking about Pastor Marty. I bet you he was a fantastic guest.
He was. So my co-host at the time, Rocky, you've met Rocky at the youth, I'm sure. Everything's a joke. Like everything, he's always got some one-liner he's going to pull out on you or something. So Marty was very timid coming. He didn't believe that we were actually doing a podcast. He thought Rocky was just messing with him. But when he walked up to my house, I was going outside to get my soda, and I looked outside just to see if he was here yet. And I saw him walking up to the front stoop of our house, and he looked like, what am I doing? I can't believe I'm about to do. They're like terrified. So yeah, but he was a good interview. He threw punches with Rocky the whole time. So it was.
That's pretty funny. So because I remember, and this kind of goes back to you. So hey, I did this podcast, and you legit did one, and you're a tech guy. You know a lot more than I do, and you graciously you said, hey, I can give you some of my old equipment. I don't play in the podcast anymore, but you can use my equipment. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I was about to just give it up. Because I'm a romantic, but I'm also I have these big visions. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna invent this company, or I'm gonna invent this tech. As a kid, I did that. I had this business. I would always write down business plans and stuff, and just kind of. But anyways, my point is that right whenever I was about to give up, you messaged me, you talked. We met at church. I kind of knew you, and then you talked about it, and then you gave me the mixer and some mic stands.
Yeah, so we geared up. I geek out about different stuff, so I buy all the stuff and do all that. I'd stopped doing it. The last time when we did was, we just looked it up, in May of 2016 was the last podcast we did. And I traveled so much, so it kind of fell to the wayside because I was always gone. I was never home. And then when I was home, I was spending time with my daughter and my wife. I wasn't going to podcast, so I'd be home on the weekend or something. Well, I got out of practice of doing it, and I still had my house set up for it. But I'd moved some family in with me. My niece now has that room, so I don't have my man cave office anymore. I've got a little small office tucked away, and there's just not enough room for all my hobbies that I wasn't doing anymore. So
you do a little bit of everything, because that's kind of where like my wife is patient with me, because I think you're probably the same way. We kind of jump around in different passions and pursuits.
Speak for yourself. I don't jump around. I just have a lot of them.
Well, I think that's the goal for me. I can't afford all of them, because I'd love to be heavy in golf and all those things. So I have to find out what kind of works with. Which podcasting is something that I enjoy. It's to the point now where I feel like it's a ministry, and that's something I just want to do as a hobby. But I'm finding people's stories are ultimately connected to God's story, and then people are hearing this like, hey man, that was very helpful, that was impactful, that really touched me and everything. And I'm like, well, all I did was facilitate a conversation. Yeah. And that's all I did, and just God's work did that. So, but anyways, my whole point is, man, thank you for on the podcast. I want to thank you for helping me. I realized that you really helped me move forward. And that's something that I was very discouraged. I wanted to do it, and so here we are. And I'm doing these podcasts and having fun. I'm sharing these people's stories, and it's been a blast. But podcast. But so I would love people to kind of get an idea of who you are.
Who I am.
So one of the questions I love asking people is, what's the most important thing that people should know about you?
Oh, man. I'm broken, I guess. That's the most important thing for me. I don't like people that portray themselves. I'm a lot of things. I wear many hats. I was told by my uncle when I was younger, and I still do this to this day, still remember it. And I know everybody's been told this in some form or fashion, if not these exact words, but my uncle told me, you want to be a jack of all trades and master of none. You want to know a little bit about everything. You don't have to know everything about anything. I was like, oh, well, that's important to go by. So, I'm a handyman. I know how to fix things around my house. My dad raised me to fix our cars and fix things around the house. I've been a very technical person on that side, on the mechanic side. I'm a bit of a geek, so I focus on technology and stuff like that. I like figuring things out.
You're a gamer?
I am a gamer.
Which is pretty cool.
I think it goes along with being kind of a computer geek is you build those computers so you could play the games. Back then, when I was coming up, you didn't buy an Xbox and you bought a computer and you gamed using that. We had Nintendos and stuff when I was growing up, but when you get into serious gaming, you had to build a computer. And so, hey, let me figure out how to build computers. I built about probably 20 computers in my life for different periods of my life. And
wow.
Now I just buy Macs and do it easy, and one gaming PC and the rest are all Macs.
That's incredible. I have a friend who he works for, he's really family. His name's Micah, and he does coding for Home Depot. Mm-hmm. And so he got it was an internship and everything, and so he got a bunch of money, and he literally just bought the pieces to this Dell computer and just assembled it.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, this is, no one else can say that. Like,
yeah.
So for you to do that, that's pretty incredible.
That's kind of what I do for my hobbies is I figure things out. So I wanted to figure out how to create a website. I had no need for a website, so I figured out how to create a website. And I took a website that I frequented, and I was like, all right, I want to create what they have, their look, their style. I obviously don't know how to do it, so I'm going to figure it out. So I used to create websites using Photoshop and slicing the images up and making those images load. Then I figured out coding. I did go to school for networking and web for a little while. So I got some of the education behind that, but I wanted to figure that out. I was into photography when I was in high school. It's one of the things I enjoy doing. So that's probably one of my real hobbies is photography.
Your passion.
So with that, I'm a geek, so I didn't just want to take pictures, right? I wanted to figure out what the gear was, what everything was doing, and so I geek out about that stuff. I have a lot of friends that are photographers, and there's nothing against them. They're about the photography and what the image looks like. They don't really understand some of the ins and outs of their camera because they don't need to in their perspective. They know how to make it look how they want it to look. I wanted to know every part of the camera, figure everything out. Why is this camera different than that camera? What can this one do that one can't, or what can it do better? And with that naturally comes audio, right? Because you get into, now I want to figure out video because I figured out the stills, so I want to figure out video. So I figured out video. With video comes audio, so I had to figure audio out. And I was like, man, I want to do a podcast. I didn't want to do a YouTube. I'm not made for TV, so I didn't want to do a YouTube. But I definitely wanted to figure out the audio, and I listen to a lot of podcasts. I like to take things in, right? So I read a lot of books, watch a lot of shows.
You sound like a slice. You sound like a genius.
I'm not a genius.
Well, I know you say that, but that's pretty remarkable. You seem to have tendencies of most brilliant, people throughout history. They have to stimulate their brains in some way. There was I think it was it Benjamin Franklin or Albert Einstein after he passed, they're looking through his stuff that he for fun would write backwards.
Just to figure it out.
To figure it out.
I like figuring things out like that.
And which is pretty cool. I think that's something that I'm desiring to be more like. Where, from a biblical perspective, I'm excited. I'm about to move into learning Greek. So, to learn how to translate Greek is going to be a very difficult task, but it's also very rewarding. But that's really cool. So what do you do? I think that's the question that people say. Man, this guy does a little bit of everything and knows a little bit of everything. What do you do?
I am my title is an associate training manager with Snap-on Tools, but I train franchises on how to run their business, how to sell, how to collect money, basically how to be a healthy business. So I train them when they start out. Basically, this is our program. This is how you run the program. This is how you can be successful with the program.
Yeah.
I have a long career with Snap-on, and I've started at the bottom and figured it out and worked my way up. And I used to train franchise. I go out with over 5 weeks and show them how it's done for 5 weeks. So I came back. I left Snapple for a little while. I was a sales developer, so I just had the people here locally in our city, the 30 franchises that I was partnered with for their business health and their sales numbers and things along those lines. You're their sales manager, if you will. I was very successful at that, but I was wanting to get back into training. That's what I had a passion for. I liked figuring things out, and I wanted to show people how to do it at that
sharing
point. Exactly.
That information and training.
So the opportunity wasn't there for me to get back into training because I was successful in the sales side of it. They wanted me to stay on the sales side of it. I have some qualms about staying in sales myself. It's really stressful for me, and I don't deal with stress very well. Yeah, so
we're going to talk about that in a little bit.
So I was like, I really want to get back to where my passion was, and there was an opportunity. So I did come with an opportunity with another company that's based out of Arizona. So I left Snapple for a little while to do training with a mobility company that did wheelchair accessible vans.
Yeah.
So there was that compassion side of it with the whole sales and sales training side of it. So it was very rewarding. I learned a lot while I was there about myself and about training. And then I got to bring that back to Snapple when I returned for this position that they created.
So one of the things that I was, as I was thinking about, because I know your story and I want to share your story here on the podcast, but what are some leadership principles or lessons that you've learned through your experience? I know that's a big question, but and I don't think just even the general work hard and you will do successful. But what are some things small things? I love those little tedious observations that you love making observations, but what are some things that you've learned through your experience?
So I've learned a lot in my experience in sales and training, but because I don't, as we'll talk, I'm not naturally a people person as far as being around people.
And you're in sales.
Yeah, exactly. so that's a challenge, right? But I did have a passion for helping people, and that's the best style of leadership. I hate to coin phrases because obviously people know them, but like Zig Ziglar always says, he's a big salesperson, that you help enough people get what they want and you'll get what you want. That's how you get what you want. Well, that's true in all leadership, right? So if you want your salespeople or anybody who you're wanting to follow you to be led well by you, you've got to help them get the things that they want out of life, if it's their career, out of their career, it's their personal life. What is their passion? Find what it is and help them get that through their job. If you're their manager, but if you're leading somebody, how do you lift them up to be the best person they can be? And if you do that, then you're going to get what you need out of them, which is what you're trying to lead them for, right? So instead of just pushing your agenda on them, that's just not a good way to lead. Right? You have a goal. You got to find a way for your goal to match what they need and help them get it, and you'll get there.
Yeah, it's kind of not speaking to someone, but through someone, trying to motivate and encourage someone. How if so in that environment, and that, which is really cool, and it has to be with your faith. So from what you're saying, you're looking at someone beyond what their role is, what their title is, but them as a person. So how do you share your faith in a workplace environment? It's where most people I've talked to in here are Christians they're in seminary, they're students, they're pastors or different avenues as that. So how do you, in your role, in your part of the world, how do you make an impact?
So I struggled with that. That's when I was leaving Snapple, and it was kind of one of the things that weighed into me leaving Snapple, as I was not a good steward of my charge.
Yeah.
To speak well into Christianity, I had my Snap-on life. This is what I did for a job, and I did it well, and I worked hard, and everybody knew me for that. Really, that's what my identity was in. It's one of the things I struggled with, was I found my identity in what I was able to achieve and what I was able to do, and there's a lot of I in there, So with that, I turned put my work hat on, and then I wasn't a Christian at those times. Not that I did unchristian things necessarily. It wasn't my focus. It wasn't my drive. When I left, it was one of the reasons, I was really starting to lean back into my faith and realize that look, I'm drawing this line. There doesn't need to be a line here. That's when I found that position with the wheelchair accessible company. It was very open when I went in the interview, open about my faith, open about how I want that to be a part of my job.
Did you kind of change your
I changed my mission and value statement.
Really?
I had my own mission and value statement when I went in for my interview, and that's what blew them away. It was like, look, I put God first and my family second and my job third. And my job is necessary for all these other things, but my faith is, the most important to me, and my family is the second most important to me. So the things I'm doing for work is for my family, and they support me. But so
wow. Okay.
So I had, and I'm not going to go into what my mission and value statement was or anything, but it was centered around that. And I was like, and that's why I kind of recreated my identity when I was changing jobs. And not that I couldn't have recreated my identity at the job I was at. It was just that it was the right time. I was making a transfer, potentially making a transfer.
It's kind of a fresh start for you.
So I was like, look, I'm going to reinvent who I am. I'm going to put this, I tell myself this now, but I'm going to put it into words in my interview that because if it's not right for them, if that's going to turn them away, that's not where I need to be. And instead it blew them away. It led to a very great community there at that job, where I got to know a lot of the believers and non-believers, and talk about my faith. And say I had call signs when I was at that job. They always gave everybody a call sign, like a nickname for like a minute. Mine was Choir Boy, because I was like, they saw me as some like perfect Christian, which I wasn't. By no means. I'm very much a broken individual, but I remember thinking, man, this is the wrong image if that's what they see in me, that I'm some perfect guy. And they go, oh, don't do anything around the... I remember thinking that when they first gave me that name. I was like, I hate that they see me in that light. But I had some coworkers come up to me and it's like, man, I want to be more like you. And, those things be important to me. It's like, well, I'm not any kind of like model. You know what I mean? Like, it's easy to be me. I'm not trying to be me, and I'm not trying to be somebody else, but I'm shooting for an unattainable goal, right? So anything good you see in me is me trying what little bit I can to be like Christ.
Wow.
And so that, by no means see me as some kind of, because you're gonna fall way short if I'm your goal. Because so I did see that, and I was able to have those type of conversations where I wasn't able to have those conversations before, because of the way I had created my identity in my work life. So when I came back to Snap-on, I maintained that when returning to Snap-on. I'm like, look, this is what's important to me. This is my life. And it allows me to have conversations at work now, because, look, this is who I am. Hey, I'm needing to step away because I'm going on this mission trip. I'm needing to step away because I have this prior obligation for church. Like, that's where the priority is.
So God, it's kind of cool, because it sounds like God really honored, your approach,
Very much so.
Not being ashamed, and living out your faith.
I don't look at what happened my previous, because I was Snap for 8 years. I don't look at that as a failure, that because I did draw that line. Obviously I'm broken, so I failed many times in that time. But that time was really strong in me, building my faith, because I had a lot of I can'ts in my life, things I couldn't handle. And it took me from the lowest on the totem pole guy, the guy that did all the grunt work, and God put me in a place and around people to lift me up and show me, hey, you can do this. Hey, you can learn this. You can figure this out. And before I knew it, I was training franchises, and I never owned a franchise. But I learned the program so well and knew it like the back of my hand, to where they trusted me to train franchises. Then I was given that opportunity, because of succeeding that, and to go into sales. And I'm not a social individual. I'm a very private person. I struggle with communicating with people at times, and
which is crazy.
So I have a social anxiety disorder, so it's just hard for me to be around a lot of people. And I was thrust into this sales job where sales is all about people.
So let's transition to that, and that's kind of the premise of this podcast. And something your story was, when I first met you and you opened up about what God has done, where He kind of brought you from. Share your story a little bit about that, about your anxiety and at the points where you were, in some ways, you're suicidal, and share that story. I would love for the audience to kind of hear that, to understand where you come from, and then you're a salesman,
and then on top of that, I'm a salesperson now.
So share that with me, man.
So I ran into you at a youth camp out. It was the first time I met you. I was traveling so much during the summer. I didn't see you in any of the summer stuff when you first came on board as an intern with the church, but I got to meet you at the campsite. And I've been very open with my anxiety and my suicide, the period I went through in my life where I was suicidal, because I feel like God's made that part of my story, right? And I can share that story, and it can help individuals. Mental health in our country is probably one of the biggest troubles that we have, and people don't know how to navigate it. In our churches, people don't know how to get. People hide from it. It's kind of becomes taboo. People don't want to talk about that. Just they don't want to talk about other, taboo things. And it's really something that needs to be leaned into. And so I've kind of leaned into it. I was raised Catholic. I had a good life. I was not abused. I did not have any of the challenges that a lot of people with mental health have those challenges. Like that's what thrust them into that. I just had a quirk about me. I just would get real uneasy about things. And I didn't realize it. It didn't come into, I guess, the light for me until I was already in the military. And I ran. First of all, you're thrust into a situation when you go into training. They purposely remove you from your life as you know it, and hey, this is your new life. And I did okay through training. It was hard being away from my family. That's all I'd known. Obviously, everybody struggles with that when they're going into the military, or even when you go to college, right? You're going to struggle with that. So it was 1999. I just graduated high school, and I started having anxiety attacks that were pretty severe, and I didn't know what was going on, like with me. I was freaking out about things that were like very small things. It feels so long ago, and I've had so many concussions. I can't remember them all. I just remember like the littlest things would happen, and I would want to hide in my barracks room. Like I really had a problem socializing with individuals. I could do the training, I could do the work. I just couldn't socialize outside of that, and it wasn't that, I'm not going to go to the bar with you because I don't go to bars. I just wasn't comfortable in bars, and I wasn't, like I felt out of control, right? It was a control issue. And I didn't know what I was hiding from, but there was something that was like real uneasy in me. And it became very painful for me. Like I was having anxiety attacks very frequently, just normal everyday life. I would panic about things that were completely out of my control, as people do. But it became where I was anxious about going down to go to breakfast. I was anxious about it. I was anxious about being around people to where it became crippling. It got to a point I couldn't sleep anymore. I wasn't sleeping. And I had a couple of incidences while I was a police officer, and I was driving the police car and had a couple of incidents. We witnessed a few suicides. So at that point, because of the witness of suicides and we had to discharge our weapon, you have to go to therapy. So I had to go to therapy, and that's when they discovered I had some, you have this questionnaire, and I'm an honest individual, so I answered things honestly, but it was determined that I was having some mental health issues, and they started diving into them and found out I was suicidal. I was dealing with mass depression, and I was having anxiety. So they do what any therapist would do, and they medicate you. And I took one pill, and I was like, I'm not going to live my life this way. Because I couldn't even tell you what the medicine was. It wasn't Valium or something like that, but it was a pretty strong medication. And to the point I took the medication, was sitting in my barracks room, and I witnessed myself drool. Like have you ever been trapped in your body and witnessed yourself drool? Like I could think, I just couldn't like really react to anything, which is, I know the state they wanted me in, but I just realized at that point, like, this isn't how I want to live either, though. So I struggled with that and went back and basically threw a fit and tore the office apart, and was like, look, I'm not taking this medicine. I refuse. Which started me on a path of counseling and stuff like that. But they determined that I was suicidal based on a letter I'd written my mother. There were suicidal tendencies in the letter and stuff. And so they started asking me if I'd had thoughts of killing myself. And I had thoughts of killing myself. I was really struggling with an empty feeling inside me I wasn't feeling anything. I was having so many anxiety attacks so frequently that I didn't feel, I was just numb. So there were times I was thinking, like, look, if I could put myself in situations that would cause me pain and struggle, and at least I was feeling something. So I was making bad decisions, basically. Yeah. But then I would think, I would lay in my room. I wouldn't sleep still. I was really struggling sleeping like an hour or two. And I remember laying in bed just thinking, like, I just want to end it, because at least I wouldn't like have to struggle anymore. I wouldn't make decisions that would hurt myself. I'm not feeling any good feelings, so I just don't want to feel anything anymore. So they leaned into that. They got me the counseling that I needed. Luckily, the military takes that serious now. I don't feel like they probably always have, and they still have a long way to go with supporting individuals. But my unit did lean into me. My captain of my unit did lean in, get me the help that I needed at that time. Didn't realize I needed. But through that, they determined that my underlying issue was I had a social anxiety disorder. So it was,
you didn't know that.
I didn't know that until that moment. Yeah.
And let me ask you this: it would help frame the context of this. But were you saved at the time?
I had been saved.
You had been saved.
So of course I was Catholic. I was raised in the church, and then as some Catholics do, we just fell away from going to church. I got out of practice of going to church. My uncle took me to a Methodist church. Like, he didn't take me. I'd say that he was a member of a Methodist church, and I really looked up to my uncle, wanted to be like my uncle. I basically loved everything about the man. Like, if I'm going to model myself after a man, my dad's a great individual. All of my uncles are great individuals. I wouldn't have gone wrong, I feel, if I'd have picked any of them. But I decided to go to church like he did. I wanted to model that after him. And so I started going to the Methodist church, and I had been saved, if you will, verbally at it used to be called Extreme Winter. I don't know if they still have it, but it was a big seminar. It was held in Branson, Missouri. And I did accept Christ in my life then. But as many Christians do, you go to church on Sunday and then it's out of your mind.
So it was more, that came kind of from your lips rather than from your heart.
I feel like it came from my heart and it came from my lips.
It's just
there was nothing to support it afterwards. Like, it died down, and it was strong, and I did volunteer in the youth. Right when I graduated, I was helping with the youth and stuff, and I had a passion for it. But it's just like, if you don't feed it right, it's just going to just wane off, and it waned off for me.
Yeah.
Of course, then I removed myself from what I know and went to the military. And I did attend church regularly in the military, but, man, it was just something I was attending. It wasn't on my heart anymore. I didn't follow it anymore.
So you weren't walking with God.
I wasn't walking with it.
So your life's kind of upside down. You're finding out that you have social anxiety disorder.
Yeah.
So
I prayed a lot to God to keep myself from doing the things that I thought. And that's basically the underlying tones, I guess, that were in the letter I wrote my mom, which that was struggling with things, and I hate that I was struggling with things, and I just, I want to keep myself from doing, something stupid and hurting myself. Now, I say I made poor decisions. I wasn't going out and getting drunk. Not that getting drunk's a horrible decision in the world, but I wasn't hurting anybody. But I was putting myself in situations where you have that fight or flight. And that's what I would have when I'm having an anxiety attack. And there were times when it was fight. So I'd be at a bar, and it's too much for me to handle.
You're
just
hypersensitive.
People. I'm real sensitive to sounds, real sensitive, like somebody touches me or something. It really gets heightened when I'm in those environments, and it would usually cause me getting in an altercation. So that's not who I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. So
you just knew that in those areas, in those environments, that's not wise.
It wasn't for me. Yeah.
It wasn't for you.
Yeah. So, but they found out in counseling. I found out through this social anxiety disorder that, look, you're just struggling with the crowds, too much going on around me. If I was a maintenance guy for a while. If I was in an environment that had a lot of machines running, it's just too much happening. I can't watch everything at once, and I get real anxious and have an anxiety attack, and it just heightens. I get real sensitive to things. It's just a struggle that I had, and it would sometimes manifest itself to where it felt like I was having a heart attack, and I would collapse.
Oh wow! So it was just
I would just like completely shut down. So
it crippled you in a way. I mean, the word I would use is, and so where did you get from there to where you are today, where you are? I love that you're honest. I think that's what I appreciate with people. You're just honest, and you use your life and your story and your experiences to glorify God. I feel like every time I listen to you, number one, you talk about what God has done, and then you also talk about what the church has done to help you as well. And I think that's important.
Yeah.
But I think that there's no hope outside the gospel. I think that because I think we all have mental health issues in some ways. May not have the capacity of social disorder, but we're in our flesh. We're broken, imperfect people, and we're in a fallen world, and that's the result of that. And I think me and people struggle in different ways, you know. So talk a little bit. How did you get to where you are today?
So while I was in the military, I had a severe car accident, and my now wife, we were dating at the time.
Yeah.
When I say severe, I was in the ICU for 2 weeks, internal bleeding, lost a percentage of my knee. There was a lot of brain bleeds and stuff. Through that, my services no longer needed with social anxiety disorder and a severe car accident. Refused surgery on my knee and got out of the military. So I only served 1 year. So that brought on more depression and anxiety, right? I wasn't even good enough for the military. It's kind of where I even though it was my decision, that's where I put myself mentally. I wasn't even good enough for, anybody can get in the military, which isn't really the case, but that's where your mind goes.
Yeah.
My wife, the girlfriend, I was very supportive. My family was very supportive of continuing to get help for my mental health.
Was your wife a big role in helping you?
Which is a key role. My family was very supportive, but she was just my girlfriend at the time, but she was there for me while I was struggling with it. I returned to church. That's where we met, was at church and youth groups. So
was she kind of helping you or encouraging you to go to church? And
she encouraged me to come back to church. She encouraged me to get the help that I needed mentally. They did find, through both my parents and my girlfriend's encouragement, they did find some medication to get me on that I was willing to take, that kind of balanced me out a little bit. But I would be good for like a year and then be like, I'm good, I don't need this anymore, and then it would come falling down. So at the point we finally got married, we got married in 2005. So she dealt with me for 5 years in a up and down state. I found a maintenance job, and I was just, hey, I'll just work with my hands. I don't have to deal with people. And we just had gotten married, and I was having a pretty strong anxiety attack because I had lost my job, and I was just starting a new job, and I was just anxious about everything, automatically, as people are, and but it would manifest itself, like multiply itself, because I was getting off of medicine. So she just sat me down and had a serious talk, like, look, you have to stay on the medicine, even though you feel like you're okay. This is not you. Like, this is the not you. Like, normally you're like this. So I did, and I've pretty much stayed on my medicine. There's times I'll get off it here or there, just out of laziness or something, but I'm not on a heavy medicine or anything, just Lexapro, and it's a small amount even, but it keeps me from just basically completely losing control. But I also know where to not put myself in situations. I don't go to bars. I don't go to, which I don't drink anyway, so I have no business in a bar. I don't go to concerts. A lot of sporting events I won't go to.
You just keep.
I just remove myself from them. So it's like, hey, I can't.
You hate bars. You're like, man,
I can't deal with them. It typically does not end well when I'm in those situations.
Which you've learned from that and everything, man. One thing I think of suicide today and everything like that, Paul talks in Ephesians how the battle isn't between flesh and blood. Mm-hmm. Now that, and this is a guy talking about, I think he wrote Ephesians when he was in prison. So he's had so much going on in life, and Paul's lived a rough life, and he's saying this. He said, so could you describe some of the enemy? I mean, some of the thoughts or things that happen. I mean, I think we all struggle with it. I think that your disorder would kind of heighten those suicidal tendencies, but because I think we all struggle with feeling inadequate, and the enemy's always lying to us and telling us that we aren't loved and we're not good enough and all those things.
The job's easy in today's society. The job's easy, and everybody who doubts would probably paint a picture of like some red-horned individual speaking over my shoulder. It doesn't take that. Just sow one little seed of doubt in today's day and age. I've been to many of student weekends and stuff where you have the individual up there and he shows the weight that is on students these days. This is what your parents expect out of you. This is what your friends expect out of you. This is what school expects out of you. This is what society, all this weight of what everybody expects out of you. It takes very little for a thought to pop in and go, You can't handle it.
Yeah, you're not good enough.
You can't handle that. You're not good enough for that. Nobody is. Nobody can handle it all, right? So it takes very little to, like, we're at a point now in society where it takes very little to sow that doubt. So it's not like, it doesn't have to be a red-horned individual standing over your shoulder that some people have this image of. It's just that little bit of doubt in your mind of, you're not good enough, you're not meeting expectations.
Because I think we're, a lot of kids today are the performance driven, therefore their identity is in their performance.
Exactly.
And so they get their value from what they do and what they achieve. And so the sad thing is, like we talk about today, we always say, hate the sin, love the sinner.
Yeah.
The problem is when you hate the sin, when you point out the sin, they equate that with an issue with them,
because that's what they identify
and
with.
which is it's very complicated today, because when you talk about some of the issues that kids struggle with and things that we in the church, that's what a very clever thing for the enemy to do.
Yeah.
For us to associate what we know our performance, the things we do, to get our value from that instead of from, and what you said, from Christ. And I think that's what's scary today. I think that's where, as an athlete, I got a lot of my value from my performance, but I realized that, man, like, all that matters is what Christ did for me on the cross.
Yeah.
That's his performance. Because of that, because I now have the righteousness that he had to pay the penalty for our sins. And that's the gospel, is that he had to live a perfect life and die on the cross and resurrect on the third day, had to pay the penalty that we deserve. And that's all that matters.
But we have individuals that try to take up that cross on their own. They feel like they have to do the same thing. They have to live that perfect life, which none of us can.
And that's why I love what you said. You said at the very beginning, you said, what's the most important thing that people should know about you? I'm broken.
Yeah, I am. I still to this day, like, as a Christian, as a follower, right? So just because I was saved, right? So I never got baptized after I was saved. I was baptized in the Catholic Church when I was, a little baby or first communion or something. I don't really equate that. And it could be, I've had many concussions. I blame that on a lot of things. So it could be I don't have a lot of memory of it.
Yeah.
But I don't remember it. I don't remember anything about it. I don't remember it being something I wanted to do or the weight of it, right? So, but I remember being stubborn about it when I first joined our church. I'd been saved, so I knew, and I knew in my heart, I had spoken the word, so why do I need to go dip myself in some water? You know what I mean? For you. That's really the mentality I had with it. I was like, no, I know I did that as a baby, I've been told, or as a child. And then on top of that, I know I've accepted Christ, and I know the day that happened, so I don't need to dip in your water I'm good, I'm covered, but I did need that. I did need that for myself mentally. I don't know, that to make that decision. If I look back, I made that decision, and look what happened. I just let it go, right? So we have to all struggle and do everything here.
Did you get baptized again?
I wound up getting baptized.
Oh, wonderful.
So for me, it was my first baptism, because I was when I was a child, but I don't remember that being a decision. And everything I remember, I'm not trying to pick on anybody of the Catholic religion, but all I remember from being Catholic, that point in my life, was I was told what to do and when to do it. That was it. There was no decision. There was no.
Yeah, baptism.
I remember going through First Communion. It was like, okay, you do this, you stand this, you do it. I don't remember what any of them were now at this point in my life, but I don't remember anything being my decision. I don't remember choosing a relationship with Christ until I chose that relationship when I was in high school on an extreme winter trip, and I didn't enact that in my life, right? So like I feel like I've done this many a times where, like, hey, I'm going to get this solved. I need to get this paperwork from the military for my records. So, hey, I'll print it off. I'll put it in an envelope. I'll put a stamp on it, and then it's in my drawer still. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's what I did with my faith at that point. It's like, yeah, that's me. I'm locked in. I love you. I want a relationship with you. Got to put that in the drawer, and I'll pull that out when I need it.
Check.
Yeah.
Check.
And there was real love, there was real passion behind that, but it died off, and I didn't continue to lean into it, right? So I do feel I lean into it now, me and my wife in our faith, and now we have a daughter, so trying to raise her to realize that at an earlier age than I did.
So real quick, I'd love to know, looking back, one of the questions I have is for you is did you see God's grace through that journey of difficulty?
I did cry out to God a lot when I was suicidal. when I was in the military, and now I was being removed from the military. I was still in a wheelchair. Like now, when I was thrust out into life in a wheelchair, I couldn't walk afterwards. Atrophy had set in my leg. I had to learn how to walk again. Not really learn how, but physical therapy to get my leg to work again. So there was still a lot of why me. I wasn't seeing the love in it. I wasn't seeing
Did you, by chance, did you experience God's love in the midst of such tragedy?
I did, but not till I got home. When I got home, I was still in it. For me, the tragedy continued, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, I'm out of the military, but I still I can't walk. You know what I mean? I can't function. And then I had to struggle to get a job, and then everybody struggles with that.
What about that hope that is there a difference in the hope that you have as a follower dealing with that compared to someone who doesn't know Christ?
At the time, I would say I wasn't following Christ. I was crying out to God, but it was just out of sheer need and necessity, right? We all think, well, I don't need that in my life right now, but when I do, I'll call out to God. Well, I was calling out to God at that time, and I do feel like God was there and led me to the right people, right? There's people that are in units that aren't supportive of mental health. There's people that are have friends that will walk away from them because, oh, you're broken. Family that'll turn their back on them. Not necessarily, but just like, now when I say turning your back, they'll just walk away and like, oh, well, that's your problem you're dealing with. Not like turn their back like you're on the street, but okay, well, you got to solve your problem. My family and my now wife was very supportive. My friends were supportive. So I was very blessed in those times. I can see those blessings those times, the right people, bless you, that were with me and kind of speaking into my life. But I didn't start to accept that and like really lean back into that until I started getting out there and quote unquote figuring it out on my own, right? And getting a job and realizing I can't figure it out on my own. I can't.
So you were self-reliant.
Yeah, it was pride, right? And then God did put me in a place to where I could go in and become a salesperson, right? And that's just not really, doesn't match. That was apples and oranges, right? Me being sales is really not the right thing. But then God helped me excel in that, and I was very successful, one of the top in the company at doing that job and being with people. My last year of doing that role, we just had our child, so my wife couldn't go to the conference that we had every year. 6,000+ people there that you're selling to on the floor. It's a very stressful environment. You have a huge number you have to hit. It's the biggest show of the year and stuff. And so I brought my mom and my sister. My mom didn't get to travel much. So hey, just come. Y'all can enjoy Washington, D.C. while I work, since my wife couldn't come. And I brought my sister so she could entertain my mother because I wasn't going to be able to take her around and do anything. And they came down the showroom floor a few times, and they're like, I just can't believe that you're able to do this with your, I'm not going to say disability, but with your challenges, right?
Yeah.
And well, A, I'm on medicine that help me maintain and control the anxiety. And then B, I really have a feeling that God put me through some of those trials and tribulations to show me how you can't, but I can show you a way to actually be successful in this, right? And still not lose yourself in it. So I was able to do that. So I wasn't a prideful individual, though I did like measure my identity at the time, even though I still was wrong, and measure my identity and what I was able to achieve through him. It was still a lot of I there. I wasn't so prideful as to think that I was awesome and I did it all on my own. I very much always lean to that. Like, there's the only way I'm able to do this is where God's brought me. He's put me in this position because it doesn't make sense anywhere else that an individual with my challenges was able to become as successful as I was in sales. And now I teach classes and do seminars, and it's natural for me. It's okay, and that's why I speak out so much and try to speak into individuals who have anxiety issues or are suicidal. Yeah, I have a loved one that was suicidal recently and was determined, or we realized she was suicidal, and I sat down and spoke to her like, look, I can't. I know what people are trying. You feel people are trying to do is, the whole what you need to do is like you need to do this. You need to be thankful for this, and you need to look at this part of your life. You need to do this to fix it. And everybody's trying to fix your problem when you don't even know what problem you have. When it boils down, I'm going to tell you how I felt at that time in my life. I felt empty. I felt like nothing I did would would help me, would do anything for me. Nothing made me feel good, but things would make me feel bad, and at least I could feel something. And then I got to the point where I didn't want to feel bad anymore. Like that drove me into depression. So then I just didn't want to feel. So, and she did feel that way. So like, I can't tell you how you feel. I can tell you how I felt. If it felt similar, then let me know. So I spoke into her. You know, a part of the concern was I don't want.
Because you had empathy.
Empathy is very. A lot of people don't understand empathy. And if you haven't watched it, I would definitely watch it. Brene Brown has a little cartoon. She did like it wasn't a TED Talk. They actually put it on TED Talks. It was I forget what other, something like TED Talks. I forget what it is. You can find it on YouTube, Brene Brown and Empathy versus Sympathy. And she does little character cartoons that are being drawn while she's talking. And it's about seeing along the path and the journey that person's having and trying to identify with them while they're there and show them love anyways, which is what Christ did for us, right? Christ didn't see a leper and say, pick yourself off the ground and dust yourself off, dude, you're fine. He's, showed them love and compassion, right?
Just faith.
Just
faith, yeah.
Having that, being around that person and loving on them and showing them that community, that same community that Christ showed individuals and didn't, push them away and had community with them, lets them and allows them to see that faith, right? I can't put that into somebody. I can't give somebody faith, right? I can't give you my faith. I can't tell you my story and that gives you faith if it doesn't speak to you. If you've had a similar situation, you hear my story, you may get something out of that. But if I can show empathy for where you're at, tell you where I've been, then hopefully you can find your faith in Jesus Christ. I can't give it to you, right? I can just tell you the story. I can tell you my story, and I can share the story in the gospel. I can't tell it to you, right? I can't tell you how to fix it, and that's how you're going to make yourself right. Somebody's not going to be in the same situation I was in, and the same thing solve it for them, right?
Well, because when the world tells you to pick yourself up, Christ says get up. Because of him, he has the power to do that. And you see that throughout scriptures, the miracles that I love I think it was in Luke 8 where the woman who grabbed Jesus' garment.
And her faith saved her.
Her small faith, but she was saved by grabbing his garment. So I think what's sad, and you've mentioned a little bit ways to encourage people with love and empathy and trying to reach them. And I think the most important thing, like I said, that there's no solution outside of the gospel, is giving people hope. And the only hope is in Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that people, I feel sad for people that, for two things, when tragedy strikes and they have nothing to blame. They have nothing to be angry at besides their situation. But the sad thing,
they'll still be angry, but
in the midst of that, there's no hope.
Yeah.
There's no bright. They can't look at brighter days. There's nothing to lean on. There's no faith. And then even sad for people who have wonderful days and have nothing to thank. They have no God to thank. And so, because there is only one God, and so I think today, and I think we talked about this, and you've mentioned some things today. We have a mental health issue that is beyond. It's not something we should just not talk about, like you said, taboo. I think you being open and saying, listen, this is my struggle. Look what God has done in my life. Look what my faith has helped me, what Christ has helped me with, and community. And you've mentioned, being part of community, how that's helped you graduate. You're very involved in your life group, which I love that. Like you were just texting your life group. I mean, that's what people need. That's what the church we go to. That's what they like. Listen, get involved in community because we were designed for community.
Exactly, and that's when I was in the military. I wasn't able to socialize because of my social anxiety disorder. Led to depression because I had no community. There wasn't a bunch of people that didn't want to go anywhere, wanted to sit in the barracks with me. You know what I mean? So like nobody wanted to do that. They wanted to get out of the barracks, and I couldn't. Everything people were doing, I just saw that as crippling, right? So
that's wonderful. So my point is, saying that, and you mentioned a lot of it, and obviously I think the number one solution is the gospel. But how do you approach people, and how can you be aware of those who may be suicidal? How do you approach that situation? It's
hard to be aware of who's suicidal, right? Some people are depressed, and it's not necessarily suicide, right? You got to look for signs. You need to be aware that there's a possibility that that's, and the only way to see signs, signs aren't the same for everybody, right? Mm-hmm. So, they're shutting themselves off, that means suicidal. No, it could just be depressed, but depression can lead to suicide, right? The only way you're going to know if somebody is suicidal is if you're trying to be a part of their life, right? So I try to be a part of the people's lives that are around me, right? And not just that surface level, hey, how's it going, right? Like, I want to get to know you, I want to get to know something about you, and then I'm going to continue to pour into you. And if you're trying to shut yourself, if you're normally receptive of that, and now you're trying to shut yourself off, something's going on in your life. So the key is not to back away from that individual, but to lean into it. Not to lean into it and let me tell you how to fix your problem. That's what we all want to do. Unfortunately, we all have this mentality we can fix things, right? I didn't talk to my family member with, this is how you need to, this is what's going to solve it for you. I don't know what's going to solve it for you. You can get help, and they can give you the tools to use to get past these things. They can't fix it, but they can give you the tools and practices to help you through those struggles. But they can't. Nobody can lay hands on you or give you a pill that's going to fix it, right? They can numb it, but they can't fix it.
Are you saying a pill's not going to fix everything?
A pill's not going to fix everything. And I take a pill, you know what I mean? So there are people that have to take. I take a pill every day. I have to, right? Just like a diabetic has to take medicine. I have to take a pill to keep my chemicals balanced so I'm not unduly anxious. I still get anxious about things, but I don't have that constant anxiety over me.
Because I think there's
we have individuals at our church that have struggled with youth, some of our youth that have struggled with anxiety and stuff like that. So I notice them pulling away, and I try to lean into the individual that's not participating, right? Let's find out why. Let's talk to them. But it's genuine. It's not fake. Oh, hey, how are you today? It's genuinely pouring into them, caring about them, showing, just as God sent his son to die for us, and his son didn't just come here and announce he's here to die for us and then go stand on a cross, right? He held community with us. He loved on people. I can do that. I can model that, right? I can lean into somebody. And I've had people in my life that I've leaned into in that manner and been there for them and not told them how to fix their problem, but been there, sat next to them while they were going through that struggle and help keep their mind off it, not hide from it, but, hey, I'm here with you. I can't, I lost my job. I can't afford to do anything. All right, dude, I'll come over. We'll sit around. We hang out. Let's just hang out. You know what I mean? I want to be around you because you're worth being around. Hang out with that individual for 6 months, a year, and take that time out of your life.
That's discipleship.
They see that, yeah, they see that value. Fast forward 2 years, and that individual's telling me, man, I was in a situation very similar. A friend of mine was in a very similar situation I was in. I asked myself, what would Robert do? That's what he said to me. What would Robert do? I want to do that. I want to do that for that individual. It's like, it's not what I would do, though. I wouldn't do that. I did that because that's what Jesus did, and that's what Jesus did to me in my life. Is how I feel. So I'm here. You're there, right? And you're having a problem. I'm going to be right there with you. Now, I do try to fix some people's problems when it comes to, man, my car's broke down. All right, I'll come pick you up and we'll go, I'm not saying don't fix anything, but some people just need you to be in their lives and to love on them, right?
And then I think, too, I would say, I love the quote, don't make earth a better place for people to go to hell from.
Yeah.
Tell people why and the what, the source of your love and your empathy, your compassion towards others. I think the solution today in a very anti-social world where it's very odd. We're social, but yet we're not connected. Or it's the opposite. We don't do life with people anymore. We stay in our rooms. We get on our phones. We compare people's highlights to our behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And then that's a source. And then you said performance. So we're always judging ourselves. We're always sizing ourselves up. And I think the solution to this is what is a Great Commission, to make disciples.
Yeah.
Not to make converts. When we share the gospel, when we tell people about the hope in Jesus Christ to find peace with God, it's not to make converts. It's to make disciples. And that is, and the thing is today, is discipleship's just not sexy. I mean, it's just not. It doesn't sound.
Well, that's the problem. Is everything has to be sexy, right? You have to have the brand new car with
it's
it.
hard.
And I've got the brand new car sitting out there. But
are you referring to Nick or Nick? Because I know Nick.
No. It's a friend of mine.
But I know that like I love with you watching you and Nick, and you are two friends that I have, and y'all seem to do life together and support each other and to be there for each other, and that's and y'all aren't just trying to reach each other's to change the mind, but direct the heart. And
he'll call me. He'll be struggling with something, dealing with something, and he's like, "Man, I just need to vent." And I'll let him. I'll listen to him, and hey, I'm right there with you. But that's kind of what it means to be a part of somebody's life, right? It's not judging them, right? Going with no judgment, or using what they said to pass judgment on somebody else. I've had a very close friend. He's like a brother to me. He was having marital problems. It was detriment to his life as far as he was concerned. You know, I mean, he came, he visited me, and I listened to him, and I told him, I'm glad you got all that off your chest, but I want you to know something. Whether you approve of it or not, I'm not changing my opinion of that individual based on the words you said, right? It's not my place to cast judgment on that individual, but I knew you needed to vent, and I listened to you, and I have compassion for you, but I also have compassion for that individual, so I'm not going to now take the words you told me, because he decided it was worth sticking with it and having that relationship and making that relationship work. And I told him, like, you've decided that, and I'm supportive of that, and I'm supportive of her. I'm putting that into words with you, that I'm not going to be the friend that is going to speak negativity about her into your life going forward, because she made this mistake and she did this to you one time. I want to tell you that now, because I don't want you 6 months from now, if things go wrong, like, now I'm going to be on your team or something. It's not a team. It's, look, I'm here for your marriage. I know you need to get that out of your chest, and I listen, and you know, I love you, and I'm sorry you went through that. But don't mistake that for now I have to feel ill towards that person also, right? So we do that in society so much. Oh, can you believe Becky did this? Oh, let's all hate Becky, right? Like, that's how things get in society. Very, very much so. We deal with high school and junior high kids in our youth, right? So you see it very much. Like, oh, you did this to so-and-so, so I've got to hate you too. That's like the rule, because we're like, no, love everybody, right? So two people can be fighting, and you can still have love amongst all of them, right? Even though y'all are in a disagreement. My family can be fighting. I can still love both sides of that argument. And it's hard sometimes to remove yourself from the argument and not add and feed into the opinions of, that was wrong with that person did.
Because it's natural for us to do that. Because I think we're tribal, and we naturally show partiality towards people. Yeah. And we naturally do that. And the sin is the why, you know, why do we do that? So that's beautiful, you know, to not be neutral, but to be gospel-centered in our relationships. Yeah. So I've had more support than just my wife and my family and Nick, like, right? So I do community with my life group, and I was real stressed out about joining a life group because, hold on, you know, some people call them small groups. We call them life groups at our church. Like, I don't know if I can do life with I feel judged. I was suicidal at one point. I was like, all these problems. I've got this anxiety thing that I deal with. It led to some anger issues. You know, I would get in a situation and get real angry and cause an altercation. Never with my loved one, but with like people I didn't even know. So I was like, I don't want to be judged for that. And I went to a life group, and I was so nervous. And in that life group were 3 people that struggle with anxiety, that are like very similar to myself. And I was just like, man, like, God put me here. And I had a great time, grew in that life group. Nick joined the life group. We grew. Now Nick's our life group leader. So as we're finishing up, man, and I want to say first and foremost, thank you for coming on the show and this podcast and opening up. I mentioned I'm thankful for your support on this podcast, and I'm praying that God uses this conversation to bless someone, to encourage someone. So, saying that, what are some things you can encourage people that struggle with social anxiety, and as well as suicidal thoughts or tendencies, or even dealing with depression? What can you encourage people? I know you've answered that in snippets, which I've pulled together, you know, community and faith and everything like that, but what would be your statement to someone struggling? My statement to the individual struggling is, you're definitely loved. I think Jesus loves you. He died for your sin, right? So whatever you feel you are not measuring up to, he doesn't need you to measure up to anything, right? And find community. Any mental health professional will tell you to find community, right? I would suggest find a community in church personally. It's what's saved me, right? So, but find community, find that individual that'll pour into your life, that doesn't expect something in return, right? That's not weighted and measured. And I was there for you this time, you have to be for me this other time, right? So find those individuals that'll pour into your life and identify those individuals. Some of those people will look like individuals that'll pour into your life, but are there today and gone tomorrow type thing. So it's normal. Just because you have this situation, it is normal. Mental
having a issue with mental health is normal in today's society, unfortunately. So you're not broke. We're all broken, but you're not broken more than anybody else, right? Everybody struggles with anxiety, but there are masses of people that have anxiety disorders, mass depression disorders, chemical imbalances, manic depressant, things along those lines. So seek help, and help doesn't always have to be a licensed professional that you have to go to counseling every week, right? Have people that will pour into your life, accept you who you are, and will kind of grow with you. So I've spoken into some of our youth, like I said, that they're afraid. They're making me take medicine, and I have to take a pill every day, right? It doesn't change who you are. I mean, I don't take something if it's changing who you are, but if you have to take something, that doesn't mean you're a failure, right? It's all chemicals, right? Like, so it's just balancing of chemicals is all it is. But find that community, lean in, and I hope that they find Christ through it, right? If you're finding community and you're modeling your community after that, then that's the direction for Christ. That's how I try to lead people to Christ personally.
Well, man, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and opening up. And most importantly, man, thank you for your friendship.
Welcome.
So it's a lot of fun. And we're out.
All right.